Hey guys, and welcome to this A plus 220 1201 lesson. This time we're having a look at exam objective 3.6. Given a scenario, install the appropriate power supply. We're going to be looking at a lot of stuff to do with power supplies in this lesson, in this video. Just like all my other videos, what I'm going to be doing is telling you every single thing you need to know about this stuff, giving you an idea of the kind of questions they may ask you, and at the end we'll have a look at some practice questions. All right, so with that being said, let's go ahead and get onto it. Let's start with input. Guys, for input, we're looking at this basic idea that you have two different options for input. And what this means is essentially the amount of power coming out of this power supply, this power socket on the wall. Depending on where you are in the world will change how much is coming out. All right, how many volts are coming out of this thing. So if you are in the United States or Canada, outlets typically provide 120 volts of alternating current at a frequency of about 60 hertz, all right, 120 volts. So that would be this 110, 120. At that point, what you need to know is for your exam, oh, hey, this guy is in America, this guy's in Canada. What this means is he's probably going to have to make sure his power outlet and his power supply unit are both set to utilize 110 to 120 volts, right? Because if he's from Europe, he may be used to wall outlets that deliver 230 volts at a frequency of 50 hertz, or in this case, really for your exam, 220 to 240 volts, right? There's a range there. So the whole point of this exam objective, this part of this exam objective is for your exam, you'll basically need to identify the fact that if you are from Europe and you come over to the United States or Canada, your power supply unit may still be configured for that voltage in Europe, right? So it may not be prepared to use the voltage in the United States. So you may have to make sure that your power supply unit can adjust. There may be a switch that you have to flick, or you may have to look at a different power supply unit and just make sure that they're all set to handle the required amount of voltage that is used in that country. That's the key to it, guys, really. Or alternatively, if you're from the US or Canada and you go over to Europe, your device, your power supply unit is going to be used to handling 110 to 120 volts. So if you go over and all of a sudden it's getting blasted with 230 volts, that's not going to end well, okay? So you want to make sure your power supply unit is able to use the right volts. Make sure you put it to the right setting, or make sure that it is able to automatically adjust if that's the case, which some can, which we'll look at coming up right about now. So tackling that issue, right? Many power supplies are equipped with a switch that lets users select the appropriate input voltage manually. So you may have a switch over here, right? This one is 115 volts. The other one would say like 220, 240, maybe 230, etc., right? So you could actually manually flick that switch to change the voltage that that power supply unit is working on to bypass this issue. Alternatively, some certain modern power supplies are designed to do that automatically, all right? They might automatically detect, hey, this is the voltage. I'm going to use the voltage that I have automatically detected because I'm so high-tech coming out of this wall socket, all right? So you want to make sure you know what kind of power supply you have to make sure you're not going to blast it with excess power, right? Otherwise, you might end up being exploded, and we don't want that. I want you to pass your exam. I don't want you to explode, okay? So another way to make sure, and this is explicitly noted in your exam as well, I believe, that the power outlet is producing the amount of volts that you expect it to be, is to use a multimeter to measure the voltage coming from the wall socket. And we've got a multimeter over here to the right. That's basically a device that is like, hey, you can plug it in and it'll tell you this is the exact amount of volts that's coming out. There's no questions about it. This is the measurement, so you can know for sure, all right? So keep that in mind. You want to make sure you're double checking the compatibility of your power supply with the detected voltage, just like I said, otherwise you might explode, okay? I don't want you to blow up. Please don't explode. The next thing you need to know for your exam, this is a specific dot point, so, get your listening ears on, is this idea that there are multiple different voltage outputs within the motherboard itself. And at the end of the day, what this really comes down to is you just need to know that common outputs within the motherboard is 3.3 volts, 5 volts, and 12 volts, all right? Largely, that's what you need to know. Basically, just understand within this motherboard, there's a whole bunch of different power outputs. A wide variety of devices need to be powered. Some of those devices are powered by a 3.3 volt, some are powered by a 5 volt, some are powered by a 12 volt. Largely, that's what it comes down to. Now, the 12 volt tends to power things to the effect of graphics card and PCIe based expansion cards, things that need a lot of power to function. Also potentially hard drive motors, right? Take some power to get those things spinning and keep those things spinning, and cooling fans as well. Those are the higher range voltage requirement items generally in a motherboard. Whereas the 5 volt, you may be looking at some USB ports, might be drawing power from that 5 volt depending on what you've got plugged in there. Okay, sometimes those things do need a little bit of additional power coming out when compared to the 3.3 volt, which tends to power things like your M2 slots. These things don't require that much power really to get going. They're pretty power efficient. Or your RAM slots as well, also quite power efficient. All right. Now, that's that. What we need to know as well for your exam is the 20+4 pin motherboard connector. So basically, guys, what that comes down to, you just need to understand way back in the day, the power connector on a motherboard was only 20 pins. But now we have a wider variety of things that go into a motherboard, and with more things comes a higher requirement for more power. So we basically just added an additional 4 pins to that 20 pin power connector to ensure that we can supply the amount of power that we actually require. So it was 20, but now it's 24. Largely, that's what it means. So 20 pin connector was the standard in older systems. However, now it's 24 pins, okay? Because we have additional energy demands. The next thing you need to know about is the redundant power supply. This is basically this concept, guys, that you may have a device that needs to be powered, and instead of, this image kind of captures it well, so that's why I use this, but instead of having just, let's say this is a power supply, instead of just having one power supply plugged in, what if a little seagull comes along and snaps this cable? You'd lose all your power. So instead, you want to have a redundant power supply, which is essentially where you have not one, but 2. So if this cord or this power supply breaks, you would have the same amount of power running through. Now, in relation to exactly how this works, you might be thinking, wait a second, we've got 2 power supplies plugged in. Isn't that going to be double the power? No, not exactly. So if both are plugged in and both are functioning well, what essentially happens is they share that load 50-50. So you're still getting the same amount of power coming through as you would if only one were plugged in, but they're just splitting it down the middle, sharing it 50-50. The moment one disconnects, generally that is detected by the other one, and that then shoots up to supplying 100% of the power. Okay, so you're not going to overload your system with a well-designed redundant power supply. That's important to know, and just keep in mind that's roughly how it works. Okay, so that is what redundant power supply is. That is different from the next one, which is a modular power supply. So modular power supply might look something like this. Basically, what it means is instead of your cables being fixed in place, you can actually choose which cables you want to use within your motherboard. All right, so what that looks like is, let's say I only wanted to use this slot, right? I could unplug this one, unplug this one, unplug this one, and then they would all look like that. I would only be left with these cords here, just for the sake of a clear example. Why would I want to do that? Because the less cords in there, the more airflow I'm going to get through that machine. And if I'm getting more airflow, I'm going to have to worry less about overheating, intermittent shutdowns, and it just makes cable management a lot easier as well. So essentially, modular power supply units allow you to specifically and explicitly choose exactly what cables you want to use in your setup. All right, that's pretty much it. You can disconnect them or connect them at will to improve the level of airflow that's going through. All right, so you only need the cables that are required for your specific setup. All right, they're not permanently attached. You can take them out, put them in. That's a modular power supply. That term modular, we should be familiar with that roughly by now. The next thing we need to know is the wattage rating. So we need to know that we have a wide variety of components in our motherboard, and each of them requires a certain amount of power, right? Your one device might require 10 watts, another device might require 100 watts, another device might require 200 watts. So in a total, if we add all those up, the first one was 10, I think, so that would be 210 watts required, right? That's how much power is required to actually operate your entire machine. So it's important to make sure you're choosing the right amount of wattage, because if you choose too little, your machine isn't going to be able to power all of its components. If you choose too much, you're going to be running an inefficient machine because you're going to have way more power than you need. So the trick is trying to count up, trying to count up the requirements of all of the individual components within your motherboard. How much power, how much wattage do they require? Add them up, and then try to have a power supply unit that meets that as closely as possible. All right. So, if you are looking to do some expansion in the future, you might provide some additional wattage to make sure that you can expand in the future. Absolutely, that's fine. But don't go over the top. If your If you add up your devices and they only require 500 watts, you don't want to go with a 900 watt power supply unit, because that's just overkill at that point, right? So try to get as close as you can is the key thing there. And I covered that idea of allowing for headroom. Generally allow for a little bit of headroom, but don't go overkill with it. Don't go overkill. Yes. Okay. So like I said, it's not very efficient if you just go way over the top. You're going to be producing more heat using unnecessary amounts of power. You have an unnecessarily high electricity bill, right? We don't want that. Now, energy efficiency. We're getting to the end of this one, guys. Basically, we've got power supplies and they are rated based on their efficiency levels. So that's about the percentage of input power converted into usable output. Based on what they create, how much of that do they actually use? So if you have an efficient power supply unit, you're going to have a reduced electricity consumption, so you'll have to pay less energy bills. You're going to have less heat generation as well, so that's absolutely a pro. And of course, if you love hugging trees like me, you want to keep all the possums safe out there. It is environmentally friendly. You reduce your energy waste too, which is a good thing, I think. But maybe you don't care. I don't know. For your exam, you need to know it anyway. So we're going to get to the questions now. Here we go with the practice questions. That's everything we've covered. I'm going to come in and read this question. Let's get to it. The first practice question reads, which of the following best compares the voltage standards in different geographical regions? A, the United States primarily uses 120 volts at 60 Hertz, whereas Europe typically uses 230 volts at 50 Hertz. B, every country in the world uses a uniform voltage standard of 220 volts at 60 Hertz. C, the voltage in all regions is identical, only the frequency differs. Or D, all electronics automatically adjust to any voltage without requiring compatibility checks. Pause the video if you need more time. This one's kind of an easy one, guys. I took it easy on you guys with this one. Answer coming in 3, 2, 1. There it is. So the answer was A. Yes, the United States uses 120 volts, whereas Europe typically uses 230 volts. So just know that is a difference. Take that into account. Try to remember that. The next question reads, Ethan is building a custom PC and needs to choose an appropriate power supply unit that can meet the voltage requirements of his components. His setup includes the following power consuming parts. A CPU requiring 150 watts, a high-performance graphics card requiring 250 watts, 2 mechanical hard drives, each consuming 15 watts from the 12-volt rail, 4 cooling fans, each requiring 5 watts, an M2 SSD relying on 10 watts, and RAM modules drawing 8 watts. To ensure stable power delivery and leave room for future expansion while still being as budget and power conscious as possible, which of the following PSU power supply unit wattage rating would be most appropriate for Ethan's build? A, 300 watts, B, 450 watts, C, 550 watts, D, 750 watts. Take a moment, guys. Take a breath. Honestly, pause the video. You're going to have to do some math there. I know I'd have to pause this. So pause the video. Your answer coming in 3. If you haven't paused it as a time, 2. Really seriously pause it. I'm going to do it. 1. Let's go. The answer is 550 watts. So basically, guys, if you add up all those wattage components, that is the one that meets the power requirement, but also allows for some headroom. They did say they want to allow for some headroom. All right. So that was key there. They want to allow for some headroom. 468 watts. If we go straight with that, we're not really going to be able to add a lot more on. But if we go with a reasonable 550 watts, then absolutely there's some headroom there. Now, if they said we only want to use the minimum amount of power, of wattage required to run what we have, then yeah, you would absolutely. Wait, no, you wouldn't go 450, would you? Because it was 468. No, either way, you got to go 550 because that's the only one that exceeds the minimum requirement, and 750 would just be overkill. So 550 was the correct option. Sorry, guys, I got a little confused myself there. Question 4. I got a sick day today, so sometimes my brain's not working on me. Question 4. Which of the following is not a common voltage output within a desktop computer? A, 8 volts. B, 3.3 volts. C, 12 volts. Or D, 5 volts. Your answer coming in 3. Pause the video. 2. Here we go. 1. We're doing it. Boom. The answer is A, 8 volts. We need to know the common voltages are 3.3 volts, 5 volts, and 12 volts. We do need to know that, guys. Pause and read that if you want to read some more information on that. But we're going to go ahead and move on with this one. The next one is a question that reads the following. Mark is setting up a new server for his company's data center. Since uptime is a top priority, the system includes two power supplies that work together to ensure continuous operation. If one power supply fails, the other seamlessly takes over without shutting down the system. Additionally, Mark can replace a faulty power unit without powering off the server, which helps maintain business continuity. Based on this description, which type of power supply is being used? A. Modular power supply. B. Redundant power supply. C. Removable power supply. D. Standard ATX power supply. Pause the video if you need more time. Your answer coming in 3, 2, 1, boom. It is redundant power supply, guys. Remember, we talked about redundant. You've got two attached at the same time so that if one fails, the other one takes over, right? That's something you do need to know. Modular is when you can choose the connections that you want in your device, all right? That was the one where you increase airflow by not having all those unnecessary cables. You can choose the cables you need for your specific setup. Yeah. That's it, guys. So look, guys, if you enjoyed this video, if you like the content in here, you can actually head to the link in my description or in my pinned comment and grab my free practice exam. Guys, my free practice exam. I've got 3 performance-based questions, 90 multiple choice questions in there for you. So go ahead and grab that to test yourself. And if you're really enjoying this, guys, you can actually get my ultimate learning guide, which is essentially completely broken down by exam objectives, as you can see here, not only by exam objective, but by specific dot points in each exam objective. And for each of those, you get notes, multiple choice questions, detailed answers, and you get 11 performance-based questions in total there, okay? So if that sounds like something you want, go ahead and grab it. You also get, I've completely forgot, performance-based, troubleshooting performance-based questions where you can actually interact with and click on these buttons, guys. So that's pretty freaking cool, if you ask me, for all of the troubleshooting exam objectives. That's great. You also get 2 videos where I tell you how to use AI to study and really quickly close any confusing portions of this exam for you so you can be ready for the exam faster. And I give you another video telling you exactly how to use multiple choice questions to study effectively. Most people don't do it effectively. Most people just spam multiple choice questions. Is that the answer? Is that the answer? Is that the answer? No, that's wrong. That's not going to adequately prepare you. I show you how to make sure you're adequately prepared for your exam. So if you want to grab that, this guy said the notes definitely helped me pass my test today. So he's saying it helped him pass. It's going to help you pass as well. And go ahead and grab it. But like I always say, guys, you don't need this. You can go through with my free content. I'm going to upload the entire course just with videos full of just like ones that I've done today on my YouTube channel. So you can keep going as you're going. But if you feel like you need me to pretty much hold your hand through this, then you can go ahead and grab this. It's really affordable, value packed. I'll leave you to it, guys. Have a good one. I'll see you in the next video.